so let's turn it over to Mike. He's got his screen up, and so take it away, Mike.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm the practice director at BTRG. We're an IBM Premier Partner, and we focus on data security and data management solutions. Certainly a big component of that is Guardium. So what we've done is we've taken the vulnerability assessment technology in Guardium, and we've extended it to create an application-specific assessment. So this would be in addition to what you would find in the delivered product from IBM. And so what I'll talk through what that is, why we created it, what it's all about, and then I'll go through what we're finding with our client base who is using this assessment, the kind of results we're getting. I'll talk through a case study, and then I'll have a very quick demo demonstrating the solution and why we created it a little further. So just very quickly about BTRG, we've been around for 20 years. We have a large background in PeopleSoft. That's really where the firm started. I myself was a PeopleSoft implementation consultant for about 15 years before moving into information governance. And so now we have really two major practices in the company, one on Oracle, PeopleSoft implementations, upgrade and support, and then the IBM practice, which really focuses on information governance, data security, and management. We work across industries and across solutions. So I'm the practice director. I've worked for more than 20 years in information technology, like I said, many years as a PeopleSoft consultant. So I have a lot of domain knowledge around PeopleSoft, and I present frequently at IBM conferences and things like that. So one of the things that we want to articulate is the how and the why and the what of what this is. So Ian talked about the vulnerability assessment capability and with Guardium. And so what we saw is that we could extend that to do checks for applications like ERP packages that actually control much of the security inside the application. So rather than having all of the configuration at the database, applications like PeopleSoft have their own what they call tools tables, people tools tables that determine who can log into the system, when they can log into the system, and what they can do. So that's why we created it, to extend that and not only check the database for vulnerabilities and harden that, but also to do the same at the application. And so if you have vulnerabilities at the application layer, really no amount of database security will address them because the application is allowing certain things to happen and that you're not necessarily going to see at the database level. So these are application-specific checks. Like I said, we have this featured one. Our flagship one is for PeopleSoft that I'll be taking you through today. And it really, what it does is it generates a scorecard from a 0 to 100% of your security level with various checks that I'll describe. And then you're going to get details on where you fail, what type of failure it is, and then also recommendations for remediation and how to fix it. So it leverages all the vulnerability assessment technology inside of Guardium. It's built upon our years of best practices at BTRG and general, PeopleSoft best practices from PeopleSoft Oracle. And it's an interactive report that actually allows you to not only drill in to find details, but also monitor your security over time. And so what we recommend is that you would run this on a regular basis to ensure that your security is increasing and certainly not ever getting less secure. So when we look at security, we tend to look at it through this filter of somewhat of an infrastructure stack, but just through these categories, from your lower level operating system up to the network database, into the application, and then into more business process level things like segregation of duties and business process controls, and then also data and volume, right? More data tends to equal more risk. But if we look at the key center section of all of these levels that we check, database security, application security, segregation of duties, and business process controls, these are really where Guardium's sweet spot lies, and is very focused on the database security and the segregation of duties, And so what we've done is we've added some things using this extensibility to fill in the application security and business process controls as well. And then we tend to handle data and volume with another solution called InfoSphere Guardium. Excuse me. So what we're checking is various types of areas to look at. Privilege, which in PeopleSoft, password settings and expiration are controlled inside the application. Authentication, so what users are in there, when can they log in, what's the parameters around authenticating users as they log into the system. Configuration, understanding how you've configured the system and then checking for best practices to ensure they're in place. Version, what versions you're on, where you sit, have you applied fixes and patch bundles from the vendor, and then other things like query level and access there. So here's just some examples. We'll see a little bit more of this in the demo, but I just wanted to talk through some of the types of things that we're looking at here. So in PeopleSoft, the users are called operator IDs or Oper ID. So one thing that you would not want to have is operators IDs associated with inactive employees. If you let if the employee was terminated or no longer with the company, you wouldn't want to have them still have an active operator ID in your system. PeopleSoft comes with various security configurations called permissionless. One of them is called all pages, which you can imagine gives access to everything in the system, and other delivered or demo type capabilities and configuration settings that you would not want to retain in your production environment. So we want to check for that. Again, making sure that we have good correlation to who are employees in the system and what operator IDs are there. There's a best practice that every user ID or operator ID should have an employee ID as well. Permissionless, again, which are security, configuration, who has access to control the security itself, thereby perhaps granting their own permission. You would not want to allow that. And then other things like ability to join more than 5 tables or other types of tables, sensitive tables you would not want them to query against, or things like unlimited sign-on. So you can get a bit of a flavor through those categories I just described. This is just a small sample of the type of checks that we're doing in this assessment. So this is the scorecard. This is the report that comes out of Guardium. You would be familiar with this if you've seen the database vulnerability assessment report. It looks identical to this, essentially. And I know it's small, so I'm going to highlight some sections here. So you can see this shows your score. So you got a 26% out of 100, so not very secure. We would want to definitely improve the security in this environment. You can see we've got the result summary, which is clickable, and it shows where we failed through the categories and then what level from critical to informational. And you can then click on the 4 minor configurations that have failed, that 4F there, and you can find out what they are and then drill down. And then here's where you see an excerpt of one of the failed tests. It shows that all pages was found in this environment, and then see details for a list of the user ID and then a recommendation. Right? So on every check that we do, you're going to get the details and a recommendation for what to do about it. So just to really hone in on some of what we're seeing and also why we created this, if you look at a vanilla or a demo PeopleSoft environment, so when you first install, and pretty much every PeopleSoft client has a vanilla environment sitting in their systems for things like applying patches and upgrades. But that scores an 11 on the assessment. So that's where we're starting. And when you implement this application, you pretty much start with that environment and then configure it to your own business. So I just put this, a lot can go wrong between 11 and 100, right? If you're starting at 11 and that's your baseline, you want to get all the way to 100, you can miss certain things. And so that's why we created this check. And what we find is that we found some clients with very low scores when we run this, 26%, 19, and even as low as 15. So we are actually finding things with this assessment. It's turning out to be a very good thing to help our clients ensure their security. And what also happens, I mentioned you want to run this over time and repeat and keep this as a best practice to continually monitor your environment for vulnerabilities. Even if you reach 100, %, you want to maintain that. So what can happen with upgrading ERP applications or really any vendor, cost application, when you upgrade that, you can introduce vulnerabilities. Again, if the vanilla environment's only an 11, you may end up introducing something. Oftentimes, when the application is controlling security, they may make changes to the way that security is configured, and therefore you need to keep up with the best practices. So we recommend it for our clients to benchmark your vulnerability score before an upgrade and then run it as you implement the upgrade, and then certainly after you go live with the upgrade to ensure that you haven't introduced any new vulnerabilities. So here is a case study. It's actually a technology company, and they scored a 26% on our vulnerability assessment when we implemented it for them. And we found vulnerabilities in their configuration within their security. We were able to implement immediate corrections, and these were done within hours, sometimes even minutes, because they're just configuration settings that once you're aware of them, you can correct very quickly, many of them, others within days. Certainly we're not talking months of effort, but the problem is not knowing that those vulnerabilities are there in the first place. And this is what this client found. They felt they were very secure and were doing many good security practices, but once we ran these checks, they realized that they had these vulnerabilities in their PeopleSoft environment. They immediately corrected them. They also implemented Guardium database activity monitoring so that they can monitor the activity there, monitor their privileged users, and ensure that once they got their environment hardened and secure, one of the best practices was then to monitor the activity there with Guardium to ensure that we didn't have any unwanted activities happening or any potential breaches happening. And they are implementing the vulnerability check on an ongoing basis to continue to monitor. So what happened also is that they were having some challenges proving their compliance because they were really basing everything around 2 audit reports which were incomplete. So once we implemented Guardium, we actually increased their audit capabilities so that they could improve their PCI and SOX compliance through the robust capabilities that were delivered with the Guardium solution to have more comprehensive audit reporting. So I'll just quick jump over to a demo. Kathy, let me know if there's any problems with seeing this.
No, it looks good.
Okay, great. So I'm just logging into our one of our Guardium environments here at BTRG, one of our demo environments. And we're going to show where in the environment we have this assessment built and how we built it. So once we log in, we're going to go to the Assess and Harden capabilities within that tab within the solution, within Guardium, and this is where we'll find the vulnerability assessment. And so what you can do is you can start with one you've already created, and there's kind of this way that you can go through what you want assessed. So I'll just stop here quickly, and you can see that we have some examples here of BTRG created financials and HR, which are the 2 common suites in PeopleSoft. And so we have created several here, and this also was our development environment, so there's some things in flight there, but I'm going to just look at the most recent version. And so once we have that, we're going to launch it, and it's now running against the database and checking for all the vulnerabilities that may be there. And then we're going to look at this report. And again, this is against a pretty generic PeopleSoft environment, so you can see we scored a 17 here, and you can see there's several things that have failed there in the vulnerability checks. And you can see that we've got a graph over here that shows when we've run it, and then we can also select a different result to look at a different result, and you can download a PDF of this. But when we're in Guardium, this is very interactive. So to one of them, but you can see we've got various password checks. Has a password expired? What's the login time? Various query checks. And so now I've drilled into operator ID employee assignment, right? So this is one of the checks that we've done just to give you a flavor of what it looks like. And so here we're looking for, are there any rows that exist with a blank employee ID? So we have one part of the query that runs that checks that. It does a count to see if we've got any, and that's the litmus test section of it. Is it a pass or fail? So that needs to be pretty much like a yes or a no, or almost like a Boolean result on the query. And so yes, it returned rows that with a blank employee ID. And then the second part of the query goes and finds the details. So you can see here we're showing a list of those employee ID or those operator IDs in the system that have no employee ID associated with them. And again, you can further extend this. So if there are other checks that you want to do, it's very straightforward to add additional checks. We've built out 40 for financials and 40 for HR, and we have some more coming in our development pipeline that we're going to create even more checks there. But this is the kind of details that you can get, which then allow you to take immediate action, and it really helps you to make these corrections rather quickly because you can see all the information that you need to make those adjustments. So again, here there's the existence of some delivered demo. You can see password minimum length, again, operator IDs, various types of checks that we're doing. And then you can, can do compares with other results to see whether you'll have more or less. Now, in this case, we haven't made any remediation checks, so there were no differences. But this is really good, as I mentioned, for ongoing monitoring to make sure that you haven't become less secure. And if you have, if you say achieve 90% security for a while and then find that after an upgrade you dip down to lower, you can then compare the 90% with the current and find out exactly what is different. So that's very helpful to understand and for the ongoing monitoring.